Okay, so ready to unlock your full potential. Today we're diving deep into how to break free from limitations. And we've got some really cool sources all about overcoming struggles and achieving success.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? They all seem to agree on one big thing.
What's
Their mindset. It's like the secret ingredient to really transforming your life.
It really is. And it's not just some vague idea either. There's actual science behind it. Have you ever heard of neuroplasticity?
Okay, neuroplasticity. I've heard the term, but remind me.
So basically, it's the brain's incredible ability to change and adapt based on what we experience and what we think about.
So you're saying our brains aren't just static. Like we're not stuck with the wiring we're born with.
Not at all. This means that when we consistently focus on positive thoughts, it's not just some fluffy feel-good practice.
Right.
It can literally rewire our brains, making us more open to opportunities and more able to bounce back from challenges.
Wow, that's amazing. And it kind of makes those negative thought spirals we all fall into sometimes seem even worse, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because if our brains are listening and rewiring based on those thoughts, that's a little scary. I remember one source even described negative thoughts as like an anchor.
Oh, I like that.
Dragging us down, preventing us from moving forward.
It's such a powerful visual, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really highlights why it's often not enough to just try to think positive in a superficial way.
Yeah.
It's about really making a conscious effort to shift our focus.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Yeah.
Because it's got to be more than just wishful thinking, right?
Right. And it's about being deliberate about replacing those limiting beliefs and doubts with more empowering thoughts. It's like instead of that heavy anchor, imagine having a set of sails that are actually propelling you towards your goals.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Swapping the anchor for the sails. That's a great analogy.
It's all about the power of positive thinking.
So how do we actually make that shift?
Well, it does take work. It takes consistent effort. And it also takes a willingness to cultivate a positive internal environment, for sure.
Okay.
But here's the thing. A huge part of that comes from our external environment, too. It's not just all internal. It's also about the people we choose to be around.
Interesting.
The information we consume, even the physical spaces we spend our time in.
Wow. So you're saying it's not enough to just work on ourselves from the inside out.
Yeah.
We have to pay attention to what's around us as well.
Exactly. One of the sources we're looking at, he's a coach, Coach Dave. He put it really bluntly, actually. He said, you're a direct result of who you surround yourself with.
Ooh, you put it like that, it's kind of scary.
Right.
It reminds me of that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
Like, wow, okay, I need to think about who those 5 people are.
It's a good reminder to really take stock of our influences, to ask ourselves, are these people lifting us up or are they holding us back? Are they positive influences?
Yeah.
And it's not just people either. Think about the books you're reading, the podcasts you're listening to. Are those things fueling your growth? Or are they actually reinforcing those old limiting beliefs?
That's such a good point. And it's so easy to fall into those traps of surrounding yourself with negativity, sometimes without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
It is, isn't it? Like, where do we even begin with that?
You can feel kind of overwhelming, right? But a good place to start, I think, is to just think about what areas of your life, maybe where you feel the most stuck or unfulfilled. Is it your career?
Yeah.
Relationships, personal growth, whatever it is. Once you've kind of identified those areas, then you can start to be a little more intentional,
Yeah.
about the influences you're allowing in those areas.
So okay, let's say I'm feeling stuck in my career, kind of like Sarah in one of these articles.
Mm-hmm.
She was saying she wanted to be more successful, but she felt like she was just kind of stuck in a rut.
Right.
So are you saying she should surround herself with more successful people?
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be like this big intimidating thing. Start small.
Yeah.
Join a networking group, connect with some inspiring people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Even just listen to podcasts or read books by people who are already where you want to be.
Oh, I like that. It's like you're getting a dose of their positive energy just by being around it.
It's like positive osmosis or something, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the flip side? What about negative influences?
Well, yeah, I mean, it works both ways, right?
Oh, right.
If you're constantly seeing, negativity on social media, doom scrolling all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It might be time to unfollow some accounts.
Yeah.
Just be mindful of what you're seeing every day.
Yeah, it's so true. And honestly, I never really thought about it that way before, but it's like we have so much more control than we think we do, really.
We do.
But we just kind of passively consume whatever's put in front of us.
Yeah, and it all starts with awareness, right?
Right.
Once we kind of understand how powerful our environment can be, then we can make those conscious choices.
Okay, I love this. So we've talked about the power of our thoughts. We've talked about the importance of our environment. But it feels like there's another piece to this puzzle here, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't just think positive thoughts and hang out with awesome people and, like, that's it, right? There's more to it.
There is, and it's about taking ownership of our journey, our own personal journeys.
Yes. Okay, tell me more about that.
So it's not enough to just have those positive thoughts, surround ourselves with those great people. We actually have to take action, too. We have to take responsibility for our own lives and make choices that are going to move us in the right direction.
It's like that saying, you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf.
Exactly. We may not be able to control everything that happens to us, that's true, but we can control how we respond to those things.
Right.
We can choose to be, victims of our circumstances, or we can choose to be the architects of our own destinies.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Architect of our destiny. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. It's such a powerful image, right? It really drives home the point that we actually have way more power than we think.
Yeah.
We have the power to create the lives that we want, but we have to start with that very important step of actually taking ownership of our own lives.
Yeah. And that's where things get a little tricky, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's so much easier to blame our problems on outside factors. Like, oh, it's the economy, or it's this person.
Right.
It's so much harder to look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm responsible for where I am right now.
You're absolutely right. It can be an uncomfortable thing, right? But the cool thing is that it's also incredibly empowering. Because when we stop pointing the finger at other people and we take ownership for ourselves, it unlocks this power within us to change.
Wow.
And we go from being, passive bystanders in our own lives to really active participants who are in the driver's seat.
Yes. And that reminds me of what one of the sources said about knowledge and how it connects to this idea of taking ownership, right? Like, it talked about how, for example, we can't really expect to take control of our health if we don't even understand how our bodies work or what it needs to thrive.
Exactly. And that principle, that applies to every single area of life, right?
Oh, yeah, it does.
Not just our physical well-being, but everything. If we want to be better with money, well, guess what? We have to learn about personal finance.
Right.
If we want to have better relationships, we probably need to learn how to communicate better.
Right.
Emotional intelligence, all that good stuff, right? So yeah, knowledge is power.
It really is.
It's a very powerful tool when it comes to personal growth,
Yeah. So it's about, like, almost becoming a student of your own life.
Yes.
Like always seeking out new information and new perspectives that are going to help you make those positive changes.
It is, yeah. It makes me think of that saying, knowledge is power. But it's not enough to just, have the information right.
Right.
We have to actually use it. Yeah, you have to apply it. It's like you can't just read a cookbook and expect to have a cake, right?
Right.
You have to actually get in there, get your hands dirty, gather those ingredients.
Yeah.
You have to take action.
That's so true. I love that analogy. So,
Yeah.
okay, we've got the recipe. We know the ingredients for personal transformation, but we can't just stand back and admire it.
Right.
We got to get in the kitchen and bake.
Right. Exactly. And just like with baking, personal growth, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. It takes time.
It takes time, it takes effort, and sometimes, yeah, you might burn the cake,
You can make a mistake or two along the way.
Yeah, you're going to mess up, you're going to have setbacks, but the important thing is that you don't let those setbacks, define you.
It's like those moments where you, slip back into old habits, those negative thought patterns. It happens,
It happens to everybody, but, you just acknowledge it. You learn from it. You grow.
Exactly. Okay, so as we're kind of wrapping up this deep dive, thinking about overcoming struggles and really achieving what we want in life,
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is, like you said at the very beginning, it really all comes back to mindset.
It does. It all starts in the mind, right? Because it's
Yeah.
about recognizing how much power we actually have, which is more than we realize a lot of the time.
Right.
We have the power to choose what we focus on, to shape the environment around us.
Yeah.
And to take ownership. And that's huge, taking ownership of our own journey, of our own life.
Yes, absolutely. Instead of feeling like you're a passive bystander,
Yeah.
just watching things happen to you, you can actually create the things that you want to see in your life.
You have that power.
It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, yeah.
So as we're wrapping up here, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, I would say just remember that making that shift, it doesn't require you to overhaul your entire life tomorrow.
Yep.
Start small. Take those little consistent actions. Just one little thing at a time, right?
Yeah. If you could change just one thought today, one influence or one action, just to kind of like step into that ownership a little bit more,
Yeah,
what would it be? Something to think about as you go throughout your day, throughout your week. Because even the smallest step can make a really big difference.
it can. As they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
So true. All right. Well, until next time, everyone, keep diving deep and keep reaching for that amazing potential.